This week in a conversation, I had the privilege to welcome back again my old friend, impeccable writer, Mary Palmer. Remember last time we had a very nice conversation with a book titled Mississippi Mojo and Murder. But she's back again now with a new book, of which we are going to have a wonderful chat. But before we get into this interesting conversation with author Mary Palmer, I just want to remind you of my own novel that was published last month, late July. And I'm encouraging you guys to do your diligence if you haven't purchased a copy to do so. And also remember, this book is a sequel to the book that was published last year. If you haven't gotten any of them, I'm encouraging you now to get both of them because it's the same story. So that way you'll get to enjoy the whole thing from the beginning to the end. And again, don't forget the book is in store, is selling everywhere they sell books. So yeah, of course. Again, my name is Ardain Isma, and I'm here with an old friend. I'm here with Dr. Mary Palmer. She is a scholar, essayist, novelist, historical fiction writer, and also she's a frequent guest in the conversation. And again, this evening or this morning, it depends on where you are across the world, I have the honor to welcome her once more as we're going to talk about her new release titled Fatal Entanglements, and also the sequel, which was published last May under the title Entangle Web. So Dr. Palmer, welcome to the conversation.
Okay, I don't have a doctorate, so you're promoting me. But anyway, Fatal Entanglements is the first of the two books. There'll be three in the trilogy. And I was going to talk mainly about that one today and then get another time, perhaps go to the Entangle Web. But
right.
The storyline on this is that it has an unusual victim, a very unusual victim. In fact, there's more than one. And then it's an unknown weapon. Now, I believe did you read the first book?
Yeah.
Did you figure, don't tell, but did you figure
No, we're not going, that's one of the reasons why I always prefer that the author tells us, because I do not want to spoil the whole story, because, it's best for you to give us a little heads up, let's give us, a little bit sneak.
Right. Well, I was just curious without saying any more. Did you figure out the weapon before it was told at the end of the story?
Well, but you know what? That's one of the greatest mystery also. Okay. My wife who read the story too.
Okay.
Yeah, she said she felt the same way. So.
Okay. I don't want to tell the weapon, but it is
no.
Unusual weapon, and it took a lot of research to make sure everything was in order, because you have to be careful about those things. But in this book is a large cast of characters, and they interact with each other. One is Fred and Colleen and Lana and Vince Downey, and kind of a flaky sister-in-law, and Nick, who is the bodyguard. And the mindset of these people, I think, is important. I always tell students that it's more to setting than just time and place, because the state of mind you're in is also part of the setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it comes to the characters. And I have to become the characters. I understand them really well. And when I set up these books that are trilogies, I have a sci-fi trilogy too. And of course, the Mojo books are a trilogy. But when I do this, I try to make sure that they will stand alone. And that's a little bit tricky, because sometimes you have to tell a little of the backstory in the second book to get the reader. Yeah, but you can do it without giving stuff away. It's got lots of people who lead the plot forward, and lots of subplots and intrigue, and quite a few twists, if you remember from reading it. There's a lot of people that interact in unusual ways, I think. It's set in Atlanta, and it deals with a very powerful, rich family and all types of conflict. The backstory that Fred, before he got to, when he was working in Atlanta, he changed careers from being a college teacher to a police lieutenant in order to catch his wife's murderer. And it has internal conflict with him in that case. It also has conflict with others, of course, with the criminals and the people he has to deal with, and with his wife, and even with the murderer herself. And there's conflict with nature and the storm that pops up towards the end of the book. Colleen O'Donnell is a TV anchor in Atlanta, and she bonds with Fred as they work together to solve these murders. She's reporting when he's, carrying the load on the police side. And, I think this kind of tells enough about the story. Did you have some other questions?
Yeah. My question, I have a question. How did you come up with this, multifaceted character? The protagonist, I would say, in this sense. How do you come up with
the character? Yeah. Well, I can't say that I really base them on people I know, but I read a lot myself, and I've told you I've traveled a lot. And I think you meet people along the way that, even if you don't pattern your protagonist on that in that way. I did when I was working for newspapers, I did a story with he was a lieutenant in the police department in Mobile, and with drug people and all kind of things like that. So you get to know them. And in my book, The Callings, I went to Angola 4 times there and talked with the prisoners there. So that's,
you had a chance to talk to them? Okay.
Yes, I did. Just the warden let me talk to them in the private room, like an attorney's room.
Right.
And so that was a way to kind of get to know reactions of prisoners, and hopefully you get the mood set and you get the vernacular that they would use, for the terminology. And I do have a former federal agent who reads my works as a beta reader, and I ask him to mainly just check to be sure I'm using the right terminology and that I'm not saying something. Sometimes if you had a gun, and you said one policeman took a gun away from another, he corrected that. He said they wouldn't do that. So
true.
Yeah. So when you get those people behind you, it really helps you. Beta readers are so good at catching little things.
Okay, so you mean you had a chance to have someone with a background in criminology to read the manuscript?
Yeah. And he doesn't necessarily read it for grammatical errors and things. He just reads for the
No, I understand.
And then I have other people. I have a teacher that reads. I have a writer that reads. I've had other authors read. But I try to be careful who I pick, because if you get the wrong people reading, they're going to fix things not fix them, mess them up. You don't want to have somebody reading unless they're really astute about it, I think.
Yeah, this is something that you should avoid doing. I mean, you can ask a close friend who's a writer, who's a reader and a writer, and the genre that you're writing, but not to give anybody what I would say, the power to change your narrative.
Yes, you don't want that.
They can give you suggestions, but
right.
You should not be allowed to fix things off your manuscript.
Yeah, you don't want your style changed. And people have different styles, and some people like a lot of dialogue and other people don't. But I kind of like short paragraphs. People are so busy multitasking, they don't want to read long things and paragraphs. One paragraph, 15 sentences. They really like to just move. They like the plot to move fast. They like it to flow, I think.
Yeah. And, but you know that, and not in mystery thrillers, but in academic fiction, like in literary fiction, it's more. In other words, it gears more towards writing long prose. If you have writers like Bill Stein or writers like Marquez, for example, great historical fiction writers. There are hardly any dialogues at all in the
Yeah, it's well like Hawaii, Mitchum. Mitchum.
yeah.
It's 100 pages of just description. But I think the main thing is, and I think you ask people to edit for you, that's fine, but it's always up to the author to have the final say. If the author
Exactly.
thinks something's wrong, they should you fix it, you know. And I think that's important too, to keep that in mind. And you can't be sensitive. I have a very tough skin. You can say anything to me and I won't be offended, you know, about writing, because you can always learn something from somebody. And I think that's important.
Let me ask you something. I mean, you're so skillful at writing mystery novels. So, what really made you so fascinated about writing mystery? Because and the story, just before I follow the protagonist all the way to the end.
Oh, thank you.
To drive people into the story, and just like you got someone on the hook. So
Yeah.
you wanna force them to follow you until the very last page to find out exactly what was gonna happen. So
Yeah.
I really love the way you write.
Thank you so much.
But you know, Mary, let me ask, what really made you so fascinated about writing mystery?
Well, I think when I first started writing, when I was just 5 years old, I think, because I went to school early. My aunt was a teacher, and I got to go to first grade early. But anyway, I think then I always thought a mystery would be what I'd want to write. But I would start it, and later, you know, maybe 10, 12 years old, I would start the book, and I wouldn't be able to finish it because I didn't know who committed the murder. You know, you can't figure all those things out. So
Exactly.
then I couldn't get around to it. So
Right.
now I just try to put. I think I love solving problems. I love that, and I think that's my.
I think that's probably why.
Yeah, I think that's my interest with mystery stories. You have to set up a situation, and you can't just do the same old thing. The butler did it, doesn't work. So I think that if you figure out something that's more intriguing, I believe that appeals to people. But I just think setting the problem up, setting the murder up, and then figuring out who did it, and bringing in other people and mixing them up and have them. I don't want to say too much, tied together sort of in the end, you know, have it go full circle. I just think it's exciting to do that. And I think people like to figure it out, but I've only had one other person that's read this book, the first book, that figured out the weapon before they got to it. Just one person so far.
I have a friend of mine is Alsatian from Alsace, France. That's all he writes about. He writes mystery. In French, they call it polar, which is a mystery novels. So you're the two people I really like, because I can read French, so I read him, so I follow him.
Yeah.
So it's you and him that I really love to read the work, because, you know, and there's always an historical background, you know.
Yeah, I like the history and real voices.
Is that because of your academic background that you always like to infuse that in the story, or is it purely, you know, purely for the simple fact you just want to spice the story by or maybe tease a reader's mind?
I do. I like to make them think. I think that part of reading is you need to think, you know.
Okay.
And, years ago, I was at a seminar. I forget where it was now, but this speaker got up and he said, "I must have time to think, for doing gets in the way." And I thought that was a very profound statement. And when you're writing like this, you have to think. But if a reader's really intent on learning the way to solve the mystery, they have to think. They have to think through the problems. I believe. I don't think they could just sit down and read it and grasp it all without analyzing it.
You know what? At some point in Fatal Entanglements, I thought it was going to end with a cliffhanger. You know, because the way you kept me going on the story.
Well, that's the goal. Keep the reader in tail, and you know, I don't like stories that get off track. You know, I think if you lose focus and your unity's gone, I think you lose the reader. But it's easy to do that because you think of something that sounds so good, you want to put it in, but not if it doesn't fit.
Mm.
So I think that's part of it too. You have to cut out the stuff that doesn't work. If you got too much that's away from your main thought.
True.
So,
True. Mhm. Now, in writing mystery, do you have to have the same skills with a writer who's specializing in writing fantasy?
I don't think so. I think it
Yeah.
was a little different.
Mm.
Maybe not a whole lot because
When it comes to world building, I'm talking about
come to what?
world building. You know, you have to build your own world from
Yes.
scratch, as
Yeah,
opposed
you
to
would in
someone who.
that regard. Yes, you would have to have if you're doing. I have one book that's just fantasy. I don't think you've seen. It's called Chance for Redemption. And
Okay.
I don't want to get off the subject here, but it's about a guy who's exploited everybody and to get rich. He dies and goes to heaven, tries to get in. St. Peter said, no, you got to go back and live your life over. Well, then you got to live in his world. You know, you got to understand that he's coming back and it's sort of like five people you meet in heaven. Did you read? Yeah, something like that. But it is fantasy, but it was fun to write. I wanted to write something like It's a Wonderful Life, and that was more fun to write than most books because I had in my head where it was going from the very beginning. But sometimes I don't. Sometimes I have to get to the point and then figure it out.
Okay. So from Fatal Entanglements, we go to Entangle Web, which is the recent recent novel, which is a sequel to the first one, which is Fatal Entanglements.
Yeah.
So, and that was released back in May. This is a story that I haven't read, but could you just give us, because I know it's out there, you want to give us like a little overview of the story? Because I know it falls into the framework of the same story.
Yeah, it's the same characters, except Fred Hansen goes back to move to Mobile because his mother lived there and his mother had died. But he has a very obnoxious, crude sister that you want to hate her. You know, she's just so gross. And so he goes to this house, which is all in disarray, and has to stay with her and becomes a policeman in Mobile. And she's just vulgar. You know, I can give you an example. She would take a paring knife and clean her fingernails and put it back in the slot without washing it. Yeah. And her mother died on the treadmill. And I won't give all that away. But anyway, it's a whole lot of mystery. She was not taking good care of her mother at all. And then Colleen moves there with him. Not with him, but she moves there and is going to college. Back into college to get another degree in Mobile, and then they stay together as partners. You know, I mean, as far as working together, she still wants to help him. He finds out I better not tell that. Anyway, he has a reason to go back to Mobile and to try to find. He's looking for a lost person, and she's there helping him, and then he has to put up with this sister, and it goes back to the first plot. Another person from the first plot comes in that he didn't know this person had acted in a very bad way. But anyhow, that's what I'm saying. I do make them stand alone, but they still, if you're going to read them, you'd get more out of it if you read them 1, 2, 3.
So we are right now in the full campaign for Entangle Web, right? Which just back in May recently. And how has the public, especially in Mobile, received this new narrative?
Well, I haven't worked a lot on promoting it. I wanted to get all 3 of them out, and then I'm going to have a launch party. Hopefully I'll have it all ready by the 16th of November, and I'll have a launch party. First, I'm going to talk about, at the launch party, I'm going to talk about, I've told you I'm still working on getting a posthumous pardon for the Boynton story. And it's been very, very complex. And so no matter where that stands, I'm going to talk about that first, because I think people get intrigued with that kind of analysis. And then I will just have the launch party for all three of these books. And then I will know more, have more, get them out and start promoting them.
Okay. There's always, I believe that isn't there an annual book festival over?
Yeah, that's Boynton Oak Festival annually at Oakley, and that's the true story, the legend, where Charles Boynton came to Mobile, was convicted of killing his best friend, and he said he wasn't guilty, and that a tree would grow from his grave, and that was 1835, and the tree is still there, and because he had unqualified jurors, and he had one that was a British citizen, one believed he was guilty before the trial, and then he had circumstantial evidence, and then two people confessed 12 and 60 years after the crime. So we had to get a law changed to read so that he would be eligible, and that's been done, and it's passed the state and the House and the governor, but we need the district attorney. Even though it's 200 years ago almost, they need the district attorney to sign a petition. It's difficult. So the process of doing that was so complex. And then at the festival, we have the book, we have the play that I wrote, The Truth is in the Tree, which three ghosts coming back and reliving. And then we have a tour of Oakley and a trolley tour that people love, going from the Mobile's first jail to Oakley, which is very near where he was hanged. And this will be the 5th year, I think, that we've had. It was like To Kill a Mockingbird. We want to promote it. And it's something Mobile didn't have before. And so we had a bus come from Foley, and we're looking for more of that type of thing, because you can't, you have to keep getting new people every year. So that's what we're looking for that, is getting more buses coming from out of the area, or even from within the area, to the festival. And they get all four of those things, and it's $50. So it's a lot of fun. Then we have refreshments. So give them a little twist.
But I remember once we had a conversation, it was during that conversation surrounding Boynton Oak and the Tree of Life. Light. There was a slave girl mentioned who claimed to have seen who did it. But because at that time, a slave who was not allowed to testify in court, don't you think that it was a miscarriage of justice? They should have at least listened to that girl.
Yeah, they should have. They should have also. There's so many things. That's why it would take a whole long time to tell the whole reason. But what happened was that they had a chance for two things. One, even though he was 19, and at that time when he was hanged, but that's pretty young, he could have been tried as an adult. That's what some constitutional lawyers have told me. And then the other thing was that they didn't bring up the fact that the jurors were unqualified until the appeal, and it was too late then. The lawyers should have discovered this. Well, they probably knew it, but they should have. If they had brought it into the case when the case was going on, it most likely would have been a mistrial. And that's really the thing, not as much saying he's innocent or guilty, but just that it should have been a mistrial, and no telling how it would have come out then.
So let's go back to the main theme, which is fatal entanglements and entangled web.
Yeah.
Now, is there a third book in this?
Yes, it's written and it's coming out soon. I just sent the cover to it. It's called Web of Deception.
Web of Deception. That's a very intriguing title, though.
Well, I said fatal entanglements, and then picked up entangled web, and then Web of Deception. And it's with the publisher. He's got to put it together, and I've sent him. I like to design my own covers, and he's great with that. So I've sent him the cover just the other day. So he's been off on vacation, but I think I'll have it in about 6 weeks. And it carries the story to a different level.
Okay, so we've been talking now for more than a half hour. My last question, Mary, is there any lesson or anything that you would want to share with fellow writers out there who would want to embark upon the same journey of writing mystery fiction? So what lesson would you
I would say
advise them?
never give up. Never give up. If even though you're not selling, I told you on one of my books it took forever to get published, but you don't give up. You keep writing, and the more you write, naturally you get better, but the more you want to do it, you know. And I do like writing trilogies because this is the third set that I've had that's a trilogy. And so I like those because when you have the characters, you know them and you can bring them forward in another setting, another situation. And I think people kind of like that too, because then they have somewhere to go when they finish the first one. One person told me the other day, I'm waiting until the third one comes out to read any of them. I want to read them in sequence all at one time. So I guess that, you know, I guess it's appealing because then you have them in your own mind as a reader. But I would say never give up and keep trying. And one thing that I had learned myself pretty much when you're writing things, I would say show, don't tell. Because a lot of times people don't develop their characters. They get involved with what's all around them. And stick to your point. Don't get off on tangents. And it's, you know, we find something interesting, we want to tell it, but if it doesn't fit, it just won't work. It just distracts your reader. That's what I would say.
And I'm pretty sure we expect a lot of that would be found in the next book, A Web of Deception, right?
Yeah, my books are available at Amazon and usually Barnes and Noble, and you can look up my website. It's just www.maryspalmer.com. And in Mobile, they're at the Haunted Bookshop and Bookseller and probably other places, but
and every platform. And I believe also I've seen the in Walmart too.
Yeah, I don't think they're there, but I don't know. I never have asked if they have.
Okay.
Yeah, and of course they do tend to discount books pretty quick. You know, make them lower the prices on them, which is a little bit of a disadvantage.
But you know how that works. But the most important thing for us as writers, we just want to get the book into the hands of readers.
Yeah.
Because we have that message that we want to share with the world.
Yeah, you want them, what good does it do to write a book if nobody's reading it, you know? And,
exactly. So with that, I'm just going to say it's been more than a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I always
and an opportunity to speak once more with my old friend.